scriptures into English. I began with the Srimad Bhagavatam. In Vrindavan, I stayed at the Radha Damodar temple. It was here that Lord Chaitanya's most intimate disciples, Rup and Jeev Goswami, had resided 400 years ago. I knew that they wanted me to go to the West, and somehow God had brought me here to receive their blessings. Writing was only half the battle. The other half was publishing. For this, I had to go to Delhi. In the heart of Chhipiwada, near Jama Masjid, was the narrow entrance of a Radha Krishna temple. On the second floor was a room given to me by a well-wisher, Krishna Pandit. This was my office in Delhi. We know that our honest attempt in presenting this great scripture, conveying the transcendental message for reviving the God consciousness of people in general, is fraught with many difficulties. Our capacity of presenting the philosophy in adequate language will certainly fail, and there may be so many discrepancies in spite of our attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration, and the leaders of the society will still accept this on account of its being an honest attempt for glorifying the Almighty. The first volume of the Srimad Bhagavatam was ready. The message of God awaited its readers. But India had changed. People were blindly imitating the West, giving up their own culture. It was such an irony. Though theoretically Indians praised their traditions, they accepted Western thoughts and way of life without hesitation in practice. In such a situation, distributing Srimad Bhagavatam was not easy. I walked through the dusty roads of Delhi in the intense heat. Sometimes this was difficult to bear. I often dreamt of going to New York. It had become an obsession. But how this would happen, I did not know. In July 1964, I was in Bombay. The aim of my coming here was to raise funds for my printing. I had visited Bombay earlier, during the days of my business. I was fairly successful then, young and well respected. But now I had come as an old renunciant, alone and poor. I attempted to arrange a meeting with Srimati Morarji, the chairman of this India Steam Navigation Company, as I had heard that she helped saints and religious people. But her officers didn't allow me in. Frustrated, I waited for over 5 hours at the entrance and finally managed to catch her attention. As Srimati Morarji went through the typed manuscripts and the published volume of the Srimad Bhagavatam, I watched her with great apprehension. Suddenly she said, "All right, I will give you the aid. Whatever you want, you can get it printed." Srimati Morarji appreciated my ideals. She herself was a very pious lady, much interested in Vedic philosophy. She requested me to read Srimad Bhagavatam to her. Every evening, we'd sit together in her garden. I meditate upon Lord Krishna because he is the absolute truth, the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because There is no other cause beyond him. One day, I was in for a pleasant surprise. The Ministry of External Affairs informed me that my no objection certificate for going to the United States was ready. But I had not instigated any proceedings. Then how did this happen? I was shown the declaration form signed by one Mr. Gopal Agrawal of Pennsylvania, in which he solemnly declared that he would bear the expenses of my stay in America. I then recollected. About 3 months ago, I had met a businessman and had mentioned to him in passing that I wanted to go to America to preach. The businessman had volunteered that he would ask his son Gopal to sponsor my visit. And now it had happened. I could not believe my eyes.
No, Swamiji. I cannot give you a free ticket on my steamship. You are too old. And I doubt whether you will be able to accomplish anything.
You must help me, Mrs. Morarji. Now I have a sponsor. It is a real chance to fulfill the mission of my life.
You know what my secretaries think? They say you are going there to die.
That is nonsense. You will see, Mrs. Morarji. I will be successful.
Okay, Swamiji. I will give you a free ticket.
The day before my departure from Calcutta, I traveled to Mayapur to visit the Samadhi of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. I recollected our first meeting. 43 years had passed since then. All along, I had struggled to fulfill his instructions. At last, I had got a chance, and I prayed for his blessings. The day had arrived. Besides me in the taxi sat Shishir Bhattacharya, a singer I had met a year ago. He was not my relative, not a disciple, not even a close friend. He was just an acquaintance who was willing to help. It was such an irony. In my native city, Calcutta, where I was born and brought up, where I lived for the greater part of my life, today I had no one even to see me off. I have my wife and sons, daughters, grandsons, everything. But I have no money, so they are a fruitless glory. Where have my loving father and mother gone? And where are all my elders who were my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family is a list of names. Old and physically weak, I was leaving on an almost impossible mission. I realized that I was going to an unknown and probably an unwelcoming country. To be poor and unknown in India was one thing. Even in these days of degradation, when Indians, influenced by the West, were giving up their culture, it was still India. It was still the remains of Vedic civilization. Here I had been able to see millionaires, governors, the Prime Minister, simply by showing up at their doors and waiting. A saint in India was respected. The Bhagavad Gita was respected. But in America, it would be different. There had been no one, a lone foreigner. Standing on the deck, I watched as the ship slowly sailed away. The Indian shore, which drifted further and further away, reminded me of the struggle I had undergone. And the sea before me, on the other hand, reminded me of the struggle that was in store ahead. The British had come to India by sea and had won it over by its strong military might. And now, also traveling by sea, I was making a humble attempt to win over the West for India, not by any weapons, but by the message of love, love of God. With 40 rupees and the handful of possessions I was carrying with me, my mission certainly seemed difficult to accomplish. In fact, I had no idea of how it could happen. But I knew this was Lord Krishna's plan, and so it would surely happen. In fact, the temples already exist, devotees exist, books exist. Only time separates us.
After a 37-day-long journey, during which he suffered 2 heart attacks, Prabhupada finally reached America. Having stayed briefly in Pennsylvania, he moved on to New York, where in July 1966, Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The rest is history.